Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay men's spirituality, reclaiming your rights. God bless you. Namaste. Blessed be. Salam. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Those are all the good words. Hate the sinner, death to infidels, unnatural, gay lifestyle, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, God hates fags. Those are the bad words. Religion, historically and presently, has been tough on gay men, with their attitudes and treatment toward gay male human beings full of conflicts, bigotry, and a searing red-hot hate that has spanned the globe since the origins of religions, resulting in the persecution, torture, and murder of more victims than can ever be counted. But for many gay men who grow up in their families of origin, while they may have been institutionally abused by their religion, they may also have been influenced by some good messages somewhere in the dogma and internalize them to improve their values, their resilience, and their character. They may have shared happy times, especially at holidays, holy days, with their parents or siblings or grandparents and community members that are cherished memories. The same religions that can be virulently hateful and murderous in their public dogma can also contain positive concepts like peace, forgiveness, charity, kindness, faith, hope, and love. Just like a battered partner returning to their perpetrator partner, because perhaps one of their needs are being met. Some gay men want to hold on to their traditions and customs and beliefs and rituals of their original spiritual tradition, flaws and all, choosing to focus on the more positive aspects of it and ignoring the thwarted and adulterated messages from its intolerant factions. For these gay men, they're not about to let a bunch of narrow-minded, short-sighted, heterocentric, backward-focused bigots keep them away from a meaningful, spiritual relationship with the higher power, God or goddess who made them. For these believers of the faith, that is an empowered, heartfelt, reasoned, and rational choice. When I work with gay men in my psychotherapy practice and coaching, part of the intake process and the assessment interview includes my asking about their spirituality, if they have any. Many gay men who are so completely bullied and battered by organized religion simply say none at all. And that's fine for a large number of guys who very consistently report a devotion to a secular humanistic approach of basically being a good person. I really feel for the guys who want to have a spiritual practice or even a religious practice, and yet feel that option has been closed to them by the anti-gay aspects of many forms of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and even the more progressive ones like Buddhism. The Dalai Lama has made anti-gay statements that you can find online. And Wicca, with its goddess-god heteronormativity concepts and imagery. There must be a male, there must be a female, this is male and this is female. Even something as progressive and controversial as Wicca can have a lot of heterocentric imagery and messages that are kind of offensive to people who don't believe in heteronormativity as the superior concept. It's like the comfort, solace, inspiration, motivation, and guidance that some gay men get out of spiritual practice and rituals growing up, including cultural things, how we celebrate holidays, the foods associated with them, rituals that we do with friends and family traditions that might vary even from house to house within the same religion. They've all been ripped away from them by their respective religions' collective anti-gay tirades. Well, hold on a second. Excuse me, as Julia Sugarbaker used to say on Designing Women on TV in the 80s, right before she would launch into one of her awesome, righteous, and articulate tirades, like The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, a gay iconic video. Look that up if you don't know it. Designing Women, The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia. And oh boy, that is a dressing down by a straight woman, but I pretty sure that a gay man had at least a little bit of influence on that writing. But, when I get to be like that, my husband calls it, ooh, Julia's in the house. So, wait just a minute. Just because some religious traditions, the conservative ones, would rather see us literally burn in hell than be anywhere near the rituals doesn't mean that we have to allow them to rip away our entire relationship to all things spiritual. When they want to, gay men have the option of reclaiming their right to spirituality in any of the world's organized traditions, or a hybrid of them that they've made all their own. Just like someone who is a survivor of sexual abuse or physical abuse needs to assertively reclaim the right to control and dominion over their own body, gay men who've been booted out of the stained glass door of their house of worship can still reclaim what in their heart of hearts their spirituality means to them. The homophobes and their bastardized version of positive spiritual dogma do not have the last sacred word. If anything, it should be us who kicks them out. Gays have been vilified by almost all of the religious orders that claim to love the sinner. Almost half of LGBT adults in this country say they have no religious affiliation, and a third say they've been made to feel unwelcome in a place of worship. Of those who are affiliated with a religion, a third chafe under a conflict between their sexual orientation or their gender identity and the teachings of their religion officially, what's on the books, what's part of church administration and governance policy. So it's hardly surprising to many LGBT people that they've chosen to reserve Sunday mornings for brunch, Friday nights for dancing, and Saturdays for the gym. If fighting the good fight for your own place at the pew doesn't interest you, you could try a solitary practice. Set a time for your spiritual or worship time. Create a shrine in your home that has meaning to you in a quiet corner of where you live, or on a solitary bit of beach, or deep in the forest. Gather by yourself or invite a friend or two, and create a ceremony. Read something that makes your heart soar. Play music that has inspiration or meaning. Sing if you're moved to, or pray, or say meaningful words, quotes, poems, sayings, song lyrics. You know me, I'm big into quoting song lyrics for inspiration and empowerment, or even the sacred texts. The homophobes aren't listening, but you can believe that the deity or deities that you recognize are listening. But what if your soul cries out for religious congress with other folks who worship the same God, sing the songs you warbled as a child, burn a familiar incense, or preach a message that touches you deep down? Well, I think you've got a few options. Number one, find a gay-friendly congregation of your chosen tradition. The number is growing, although obviously with varying degrees of enthusiasm. A Duke University of 1,331 American congregations found that almost half of the houses of worship allow gay and lesbian members in long-term relationships to join. And that was a 10% increase since 2007. A third of congregations allow LGBT members to volunteer in leadership roles. Now, to me, those numbers aren't impressive and feel a bit like they're, throwing crumbs to us. But for some people, it's a start, worth trying, and continuing to make the situation better from there, working from within. But if treatment like that from a congregation seems like patronizing to you, keep looking. Church ads, wherever they are promoting themselves and their church community, that use phrases like welcoming or affirming are often code for LGBT friendly. As if they needed to use a code, which is something to consider right there. Why not just come out and say it? You could always call first and talk to a church official and see if you could be reassured about their welcoming stance. We all know, talking to somebody, we know whether they're an ally and they're for us, or whether they're giving us some kind of lip service and they're actually saying we're not welcome at all. We can see right through that very easily. Put some specific questions to the lead clergy or the staff. Ask to have audience with the lead clergy of whoever the organization is. Do a Google or a meetup.com search for LGBT-friendly religious gatherings in your area. Gay-friendly churches include the Association of Welcoming and Affirming Baptists, United Church of Christ, the Metropolitan Community Church, and the Liberal Catholic Church. And then, of course, there are the LGBT-affirming synagogues like Congregation Kol Ami in Los Angeles, and of course there are others. The Liberal Catholic Church was established as a church for gays in 1916 in Australia. So this idea has been a need for people for a long time. Number 2 is take the spiritual smorgasbord approach. Enjoy the portions of your original denomination's beliefs that speak to you, and then ignore whatever feels dismissive or hateful. Consider this: 82% of Catholics say birth control is acceptable, but they still consider themselves Catholic. There can be some pro-choice Catholics, even though the Pope would kind of look down on that. The current Pope of the Catholic Church is very controversial because, on the one hand, he is probably the best yet on preaching tolerance, but yet at the same time, when push comes to shove, he will go down on record with some very anti-gay, anti-LGBT statements. Even though he tries to be humanistic and compassionate, once in a while he puts his foot down about what the church says about, you can be gay, you just can't have any sex. That kind of doesn't make sense. Even though being gay is something that you are and not something that you do, the homophobes say, well, it's just a choice that you can do, and it's a choice that you can choose to not do. That doesn't make sense. We're gay even if we never have any type of sexual expression whatsoever. But it's the impurity. The Pope, for example, for all of his literally preaching of tolerance, at some point, Catholic official dogma is anti-gay and anti-LGBT. So it's the, we welcome everybody as long as you contribute to the collection plate. That's not going to fly. That's that stuff from the civil rights movement racially about separate but equal, and trying to look affirmative when they're actually not. Number 3 is queer your church. If you've got the energy and the grit, stick with your original church and let the leaders and congregation know your corrections whenever they're preaching anything but love for anyone. Religious organizations around the world are wrestling with how to fit their long-held anti-gay opinions into a world that's increasingly accepting. Churches and other religious organizations simply will not survive if they grow increasingly irrelevant to modern society. And that's as it should be. Good. They should be made obsolete if they have hateful dogma. Try as some might, to keep us in the dark ages, time marches on, and the world's churches and synagogues and mosques will either march with it or be relegated to the pages of history, kind of like Latin and cursive writing. Don't get me started on that. Work from the inside to tip that scale in your congregation toward compassion and justice, or at least make them very uncomfortable with the cognitive dissonance of their hating gays in the aggregate, but loving the perfectly nice, specific LGBT people they see every week at services. You can't have it both ways. They can't be anti-LGBT in general, but then, they really love Tom and Jason, who always sit in the third pew from the front. It's a double standard that they're engaging in. Eventually, the reality of your humanity, just as a person, will overwhelm the negative dogma that they've been taught. Number 4 is, watch the courts. When the Defense of Marriage Act was overturned and marriage equality was established, it opened the walls of many institutions for LGBT members, and also there have been some laws about not having discrimination by church staff as employment discrimination, although Republicans and conservatives try to protect churches of their right to discriminate in the name of their religious dogma. They carve out exceptions for employment at religious institutions or even religious schools. But, that's a political battle because, a job at a church, is it church or is it job? Which comes first in terms of state law? Government grants also, going to non-accepting religious organizations. Sometimes American taxpayer money goes to anti-gay religious churches if they're providing, housing for the homeless or some kind of charitable aid like food or something for homeless people or to young mothers. So that's sometimes controversial because taxpayer money ends up going, for example, to religious schools. That was one of the things that Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education under Trump, was really an aggressive advocate of taxpayer money to religious Christian, conservative Christian churches. So religion that formed in the days when nonconformance was a burning offense, literally, they're going to face a period of reflection and great change if they're going to stay relevant. We can welcome the changes if and when they come, but we have to watch for a certain insincere, begrudging compliance, though. Kind of like how eHarmony.com curtailed their anti-gay activities and of being heterosexual only when they were forced to legally. Or, so they set up a whole some kind of sister website for LGBT people, but the owner of it is a virulently anti-gay religious, actually psychotherapist, one of the many therapists I can't stand because instead of being supportive to people and being in the helping professions, he's a grifter and a hater. eHarmony.com, remember that to avoid it. Chick-fil-A, the fast food restaurants, they curtailed their donations to the most virulently anti-gay hate organizations, the worst of the worst on the planet, only after their public relations consultants told them to, or they might face insolvency or they might face difficulty placing their stores in areas that, protect against discrimination. Although, by many reports, they still haven't learned their lesson and the boycott is very definitely on. So insincere efforts by these organizations need to be met with confrontation and exposure, and sincere efforts for inclusion should be met with a gracious negotiation. Churches in the South went through a lot of this after the Civil Rights Movement, but Southern Protestant churches can still be very segregated. You have the idea of the black church. You don't really hear much about the white church, but you do hear about the black church as if black people are segregated from the presumably white Protestant churches, particularly in the South, to this day. Some churches are very active with reconciliation ministry, which is actually a very sincere effort to bridge the gap between anti-gay churches historically and their victims, and they have considerable success in some congregations. They believe in the idea of love and humanity, and discrimination and hate is something that they confront. And of course, certain members of those congregations don't want that. They don't want reconciliation ministry and inclusion. They want the right to discriminate and the right to hate because it enthralls them and empowers them, and they feel invigorated by that. I've got some other writing about the invigoration that comes with hate. It's very, very stimulating. It's like a drug. So one of the most important things for gay men to remember always is that you have a right to your spirituality every bit as someone straight does. Finding meaning and inspiration and hope and solace and comfort and making sense of the world beyond the banalities of everyday living, it is an important part of your existential experience and your psychological experience and your sense of self. So act up and fight back. Don't just take all this repression lying down. Reclaim your practices and traditions and rituals and relationships of whatever spiritual expression speaks to you and feels right to you, whether it was the one you came from culturally in your family of origin or your community, or whether it's something else you've learned as an adult, or whether it's some kind of hybrid of all these different positive ideas that you want to adopt for your own practice. You have a right to adopt a practice and a spiritual makeup that really falls in line with your values and priorities and goals. Much like they say, in Alcoholics Anonymous, keep what you want and leave the rest. So you know your own spiritual path, so you walk your own path with grace and peace. If you need help or support reconciling being gay with the spirituality that you come from, and feeling conflicted and feeling confused and oppressed, or recovering from how people in religious institutions of any kind have oppressed you or even traumatized you, let me help. That's something that we can talk about in both therapy and coaching. There's a lot of resources for that. I have colleagues who do this, almost exclusively in their practices. I do it as one of a number of issues that I help gay men with. So if you're interested in getting support for that, you can always call or text 310-339-5778 in the United States. If you're outside, you might need the 01 country code, 310-339-5778. That's good on regular phone or on WhatsApp. Or you can email me, ken@gaytherapyla.com, for more information on my services and my schedule and how we figure out a way to work together. So I hope you found that helpful, and I'll see you next time.